And again, salam alaikum, and a big welcome to everyone who have joined us here today. Thank you so much. I know everyone is really busy with a lot of work, so if you've taken time out to come and share this evening with us for this presentation, I really appreciate it. Uh, I would just like to say in the beginning that I do have the chat box open, so I will be seeing messages while I'm doing the presentation. So feel free to, if you would like to make comments or ask any questions. Hopefully the PowerPoint, the slides don't freeze up. They do that sometimes when the chat box is open. Also, if you have any questions that you would like to speak or ask me, if you would, I would really appreciate it if you would keep it till the end of the presentation, because sometimes when the mics are on, then there's a lot of outside noise and disturbance. So we have a question answer time at the end of the session, and I'd be most welcome to ask at that time, and I'd be willing to take your questions. So inshallah, let's begin. Bismillah. The name of my presentation, as you can see, is Technical Writing. And this technical writing workshop, I have not limited it just to engineering. So I've tried to cover all the fields, the technical fields, engineering basically, which is civil, mechanical, chemical, materials engineering, medical engineering, environment engineering, agricultural sciences, social sciences, and also a little bit of media technology. So this is basically what I try to cover. What is technical writing? So before we even start or go into it, we need to define it. We need to know what it is. And I'm sure there are many of us here in the audience today who do know what it is. But for some of us who know a little bit or who don't know much about it, I'd just like to go into the definition to make it very clear. Technical writing is a type of writing where the author writes about a particular subject that requires direction, instruction, or explanation. So it just doesn't require you to be directed or told what you have to do. You also need to be instructed sometimes what you have to do through technical writing and explain in more detail. This style of writing has a very different purpose and different characteristics from other writing styles, such as creative writing, academic writing, or business writing. So at the ELI, we're more familiar with creative writing and academic writing. So technical writing, you will find there are some underlying similarities, but basically it is quite different. It is used to communicate information to a technical audience. It could be management, it could be employees, and it could be other businesses also. And as we go along in the slides, you'll understand what I mean. What are the different types of technical writing? The different types of you can see there are several examples that I've put down in this slide. They could be company documents, so documents printed or published by a company about the kind of work, technical work that they're involved in. It could be annual reports by a company. So how did the company do in the last year? What were the achievements? Did they make any profit? Were there any things that they needed to improve on? User manuals. This will be basically for people who could be beginners or people who just basically know a little bit about the field or the area, and they need to know how to use a certain piece of equipment. So a definition or explanation would be given over there in the user manual. Conference and journal papers. So just like you have for any other field, also technical writing and engineering would have conference papers and journal papers that they would need to submit. Proposals, which would be for any idea that you want to expand on and you want to develop on, and things that you're going to write about. Presentations, very similar to a presentation like this, but of course it would vary in complexity. It could be simpler, it could be more complicated, depending on the kind of audience. Standard operating procedures, or SOPs as they are called. This would be basically how to operate a certain piece of equipment or machinery, and they would give you step-by-step guidelines on how it's to be done. So very much like how a recipe would be written. So first do this, and then followed by this, and then do this. Software installation guides, okay, this could be in the IT field, how to install a certain piece of software. People are new to it. So how should it be done on a company level, on a business level, on a personal level? And if you look at the image that I have over there, it tells you that technical writing involves planning. So you do need to plan a lot, like any other piece of writing. You do need to do also a lot of research. You need to look into your field in more detail, try to see what exactly you need to put into your paper or your document. You need to create it. And also, finally, you need to document it. So technical writing includes a wide range of documents. And what are these documents? Some we mentioned a little while back in the previous slide, but there could be more. Instructions. Okay, so instructions for any piece of machinery or equipment. How do we use it? What are the precautions you need to take? How do you go about it step by step? Reviews of a certain product, probably. What is the review of it? How did it work? Was it good? Reports that are given. This could also relate to company reports, newsletters from a company, okay, things that have been done in the recent past and also things that are forthcoming in the future. Presentations, like I mentioned before, okay, this could be short presentations, long presentations, web pages that need to be put up on a particular company's website. So it would require a certain special kind of writing, which would be involved in technical writing. Brochures and flyers to do with, again, with the company, with the equipment, with the machinery, giving details about it. This could also be accompanied by images, about which I'm going to mention more later. Proposals that we talked about before, so varied proposals, different kinds of proposals. Letters and emails and memos, all of these could be to do with the particular company. So I'm sorry, could you hear, can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me? Okay, thank you. Um, so yes, letters, emails, and memos. Memos, memorandums that could be sent in as a company memo, detailing anything that has been newly introduced in the market or that the company is willing to buy. Graphics, again, I would dwell more on graphics later, but for now, I'd like to just mention to you that graphics are pictures and images. Yes, definitely, Mr. Awad. Yes, the type of writing that requires technical vocabulary terminology, which has to do with the particular technical equipment that the company or the product is dealing with. Press releases about a certain new product that is being launched by a company because they want it released out to the audience, to their market, to the people who are interested in buying it. So they want to maximize the marketability or the sale value of the machine or the product that they're selling. Handbooks, again, to as a guide on how to operate the machinery, and specifications, again, dealing with the technical equipment that they have. What are its specifications and what is it best used for? What should it probably not be used for? So all of this would involve a huge amount of technical writing for these different products. What is the purpose of technical writing? Why do we do it? Why do we have technical writing at all? So the main purpose of technical writing is to often provide complex information, okay? So it's like I mentioned before, new technology, new medicine, new procedures, complex analysis, how an object works, how to complete a certain project, okay? So all of this could be given in your technical writing depending on what you are using. Out of all the ones that I mentioned before, it could be brochures, it could be reviews, it could be reports, it could be newsletters. So it would all depend on the audience that you have. So a lot of our writing is geared towards the right kind of audience. The audience may be readers, okay, those who are reading the papers that have been submitted, reading proposals, abstracts, conference attendees who are coming in for a technical conference or an event, an engineering event, employees of a certain company, the management of the company, so top level people, people at the blue collar level, all of these would be involved in these technical events, and so the writing would be geared towards that, keeping them in mind. The information should be presented in a clear, relevant, and easy way to understand terminology without any redundancy. So the terminology should be easy to understand. It should be very clear, definitely related to the technical field, but it should keep the audience in mind and not go into too much of complicated jargon. So if the person is in the technical field, there is a certain amount of terminology that you can use and you know that they would understand it. Okay, so once again, is your audience already conversant? Do they already know these terms? You don't need to over explain. But if you feel that your audience is not too familiar, then you may need to make it a little simpler and need to explain it a little more. The objective is to convey the information to the audience in a manner that is understandable and comprehensible to them in a logical and a very clear manner. So that is your idea, to get across the maximum amount of information with the least amount of fuss. Try to see that they get the impression from you, from your presentation, from your writing. Okay, so your writing should be very clear for them. Now over here, this is a very nice a web or a cloud about what a technical writer should be doing. It tells you, first of all, that a technical writer could be serving in training. So his writing could be used for training purposes. It could be used in different webinars, okay, so as parts of presentation. It could be used as documentation, like I said before, brochures, newsletters, memos. It could be used as quality assurance to know how good the product is and if it passes the quality test. It could be used in strategic meetings in top management, where employers meet, maybe employers even of different companies meet to want to discuss a certain product. And iteration planning. Now, iteration planning comes from the word reiteration, which means that you repeat a certain process. So the cycle is repeated until it develops in complexity and it reaches a final step. So you reiterate it and repeat certain steps. And basically 3 steps are taken: formulate, test, and evaluate. So if the piece of writing can formulate a certain piece of equipment, it can tell you how it can be tested, and it can tell you how to evaluate it, then your technical writing has been quite successful. What should a technical writer know? So what are the things that the writer should know? Now, you should know your audience. That is the number one tip, to be able to know your audience, because all writing is writing to someone. Who is my audience going to be? Are they people from the mechanical engineering field? Are they people from the medical field? Are they people from environmental engineering? So you need to gear your writing to suit your audience, because if you don't do it, then they will not understand the material that you're putting across to them. Also, you must know your style. Closely related to audience is your style. So like I said before, change your style accordingly. Once you know who your audience is going to be, you can either simplify it or you can keep it to a certain level of complexity, depending on what the audience can understand. Also know your content, okay? Again, think about your content. What am I presenting to them in my writing? Is it too complicated? Is it related to the field that they would be used to and that they would be reading? Outline and then execute. So definitely present an outline. Very important to give an outline so that right from the word go, right from the beginning, they know what to expect and they know where you're headed. And then execute it and then write it more in detail. Define your project and stick to it. Okay, this is also very important because you need to define what you're going to write about and stick to it, not deviate away from it. Because if you deviate, then it's not going to be what your project is about. And it's going to get also very boring or very redundant. Simplify your language. Now, simplify, like I said, to the extent that you should think it should be. Like when I'm presenting my piece of writing, will the person who's reading it understand what I'm saying, or do I need to simplify it a little bit more? Or can I keep it to a moderate level, or can I go a little higher also? Establish a very clear structure. So make sure that your piece of writing is very structured, okay? Going from, and I'm going to tell you more about it in the further slides, how you can keep it structured. So going from the basics to a little bit more complicated, and finally ending with some kind of resolution or some kind of evaluation. And use your layout to the maximum advantage. See that the layout that you're putting is going to present your writing in the best possible manner so that your material is able to jump out in the person's eyes and to the audience. What are the principles of technical writing? Remember, your purpose is to inform or persuade. So basically, when you do a piece of writing, you are informing the person who's going to be reading it, or you are persuading that your piece of equipment or your project is something that is very good and can be used maybe by their company or by other companies. Remember your audience. So you have to remember their concerns, the background, where are they coming from, what is their common field of interest, what is their attitude towards your purpose. Okay, so who are you presenting this piece of writing to? So all of this has to be kept in mind when you are actually doing your writing. Make your content very specific to the purpose and to the audience. So don't let go of these two goals. Always keep them in mind, your audience as well as your purpose. These two are of extreme importance. Write clearly and very precisely. So keep an active voice and an appropriate language for the audience. Yes, so it has to be extremely clear and precise. The terms and terminology that you use should be very clear. Always give yourself time to write, revise, and edit the document. And this goes for any piece of writing, not just technical writing. We all know the importance and the value of writing, revising, re-revising, and editing it constantly to know that we can weed out our mistakes and to see that what we're going to give in our final product is the best piece of writing possible. And if you look at the image there, in that slide, you can see that I have put over there audience and purpose of prime importance, along with your supporting materials and of course time. So you must know how much time you have when you have to give in your piece of writing so that you do not waste too much time. Now, the pyramid method of writing works very well with all writing, and also it does with technical writing. So when you have the pyramid method of writing, you can begin with a kind of a summary, okay, and give the background information. Then you have the main body, which has discussion, details, and action. And then the last would be the outcome or the results of the action. And if you look towards the side, there's an explanation. So the summary is considered the most important information. It tells the readers what will be discussed. So it draws the reader in by telling you exactly what the writing or the piece of the paper is going to tell you about. Background information answers who, where, when, and why. So it gives you a very good idea of where all this information is coming from, or where are you leading the person. The discussion depicts each item or topic and identifies any action that is required. Where are you headed with your information? The outcome is a general statement of results and any recommendations. So any suggestions, any recommendations that you have, and the results would be given in the outcome. Depending on the type of document, there may be additional levels of necessary information. So after this, you could add a bit depending. Of course, this will differ from person to person. Okay, so we'll first take the summary. So front matter or the summary in the abstract. Front matter is the most important part of the technical document. It introduces readers into the title of the document. So the title page itself tells you immediately. So it has to be very crisp and very clear so that you tell the audience what you're writing about immediately. Title of the document, which is very important, the author, which would be you if you were the writer, the topics which will be described, the issues which would be solved, or one issue if it's going to be solved, the methods used, and the overall purpose of your document. So if you can look at the image, it says the technical writing will have planning, researching, organizing, writing and editing, and then of course, finally publishing. And at the side, if you see, you have the title page, you have the abstract, you have the table of contents, you have list of figures. Okay, what figures have you used? List of tables, if you used any charts and tables, and list of terms, followed at the end by acknowledgements, of course, which is very important. Then you come to the body. When you have the body of the document, this contains materials with steps to take and methods to use in order to resolve the issue presented in the abstract. So what steps are you taking? What issues are you going to resolve in this abstract that you've given? So in this, there should be the introduction. You start with your introduction. You can give a background. Now, of course, these are not hard and fast rules that you have to go about it this way. This is just a general idea of how it should be done. So this is to show how it could be done in a very organized way. There could be slight variation and a slight overlapping of these steps for different people. After the introduction and background, you give the theory. So you explain what it is. You give your design criteria. What is the criteria? Why have you chosen this design? You give the materials and apparatus that you're going to use. Follow it up by the procedure. What procedure are you going to utilize to explain how the piece of the apparatus works? What are the results of this apparatus? You give a discussion of the results, and you end with a conclusion or a summary and a plan for future action. And then we come to the conclusion or the end matter. The end matter provides useful information and materials outside the main body. So this end part will consist of references that you've used. Okay, so we have to acknowledge all our references, very important. And you have to give an appendix so that it's very clear to the reader what you are writing. And you also have your index. So without these, it would probably be incomplete. Maybe you don't have all three, you could have one or you could have two. But yes, it is definitely recommended to have these three. These are some tips to develop a good technical writing style. So be aware of the skills that are required. First of all, you must be very clear and concise. And again, I think, like I said before, this goes for all kinds of writing. You have to be clear and concise. You must have a good eye for detail. So try to see what details you've included. Is it too detailed or is there very few details? So there should be the right balance. And you must have an extensive knowledge of your subject. If you have a knowledge of your subject matter, you can't go wrong. And for this, you need to do a lot of research. You need to do a lot of reading. You need to do a lot of finding out more and more about your subject so that you get the right balance there. Okay, so the next one, know your audience. Uh, you have to know your audience because all writing, as I said, is writing to someone. Now, I may be repeating this more than once, but this is a very important point. Without knowing our audience, we cannot suit our writing to their minds or to their form of reading, to their form of understanding. So with technical writing, this concept takes on a very literal sense. You have to always keep in mind that you're responsible for communicating your ideas clearly and effectively to someone else in your writing. I would say it would be a very successful piece of writing if someone who does not have a lot of technical knowledge can still understand your writing. Then you have really won. But of course, you will know that your audience is well versed in the kind of writing that you're doing. So yes, they should be able to understand it. The audience and their needs can vary, and you need to be conscious of that. Yes, so depending on the field that you're writing about, they can vary. But yes, you need to be very conscious and very aware of who you are writing for. Moreover, every other tip on this list comes back to this one. So again, knowing your audience and how important that is. So for knowing your audience, I've put up another slide because this is such an important aspect. And I'm going to reflect over here upon the Pynchon example. Pynchon example is actually named after someone called Thomas Pynchon, and he was a writer of pessimistic novels, but he used a lot of math, science, and technology. And he kind of took it for granted that the people who would be reading would have a knowledge of this. That is why it's called the Pynchon example. So if you are, to use the Pynchon example, if you are an expert on rockets and aeronautics, and you're writing to other experts about the advanced technical details of a new rocket, it is probably safe to assume a high level of prior knowledge, meaning you can avoid explaining basic concepts and use complex jargon as long as it is clear. So if you know that the person who's going to be reading your writing is someone who knows a lot about aeronautics or about rockets, and if you're using complicated terms, that's perfectly all right. That's why knowing your audience is so important. However, on the other hand, if they are not too familiar with it, then you will need to go into a little more explanation and use a few more simplistic terms. However, if you are the same expert writing a field manual for soldiers who will actually be firing the rocket, because we have to remember that soldiers may not be that they may not have that much of expertise in aeronautics or in rockets. You may need to explain basic concepts and avoid complex terms. You also need to consider what is necessary to include and what can be skipped over. In other words, with technical writing, you'll want to include only what your reader needs to know while excluding too many details. Okay, so not too many details, but striking, like I said before, the right balance between what you can give them. Knowing your style, okay? So this was something else we just briefly touched upon in the previous slide. You must know your style. So closely related to audience is your style. What you are writing determines who you are writing to and vice versa. Every style comes with different conventions, which you should understand and embrace in order to write effectively. Those conventions exist for a reason, which is to enable you to better reach your audience. Okay, so should I explain this chart a little bit more, or should I explain this diagram a little bit more? Or can I understand that, know that my audience would be able to know, whoever's reading my piece of writing would know what this diagram means. So this is basically up to you. You have to know that to be able to decide it. The stylistic demands of demands and purpose of a technical report differ widely from those of an instruction manual. So an instruction manual, of course, would be much more simpler than a technical report. The best way to understand these demands is to read. Find strong examples of the style you are working in and emulate their most effective qualities. So like I said before, research a lot and read a lot to be able to know what kind of writing is going to work. Know the content, okay? You need to understand what you are writing about better than the audience to which you are writing, okay? So not just knowing the audience is not enough. You have to know your content very well. This does not mean you need to be a full-blown expert, but you need to know the ins and outs well enough that you can clearly explain it to someone else and anticipate any questions that might arise. So you may not be a complete expert in your field, but with a lot of research and with a lot of reading, you can become I would say, a semi-expert. Also, you can consult a lot of other people who are familiar with that field. You can give a piece of writing to someone else, another pair of eyes to have a look. And that way you can also get good with your writing, with your content. Do research, take your time, take notes. And if you are not an expert, consult someone who is. What I just said, you can consult another person. Outline, then execute. Okay, can someone explain what this would mean? Outline it and then execute it. Anyone can put it in the chat box if you wish to. Would anyone like to try what that means? First outline and then execute. Yes, Reem, thank you so much. To put like a boundary, definitely. Yes, when you have the boundary, I like the word that you used. Yes, Mr. Awad, basic tips and then explain. And Rida has said planning and practice, definitely. Yes, very good. Thank you so much. So yes, this would be a way of putting the outline and like Reem said, putting a boundary so that you know exactly how far you can go in order to explain what you have to write. So before you dig in and start writing, outline your project. The outlining stage of writing gives you the opportunity to make sure that that document you are producing is laid out in a very logical and functional way. So the outline, when you write it, you will come to know step by step how you are proceeding, okay? And you can catch yourself right there if you find that there is a step that came too soon or another one that needs to maybe become step 3 and not be step 5, then you can check yourself right there and then. And this gives you better planning so that when you execute it, it is more successful. Do research, work on developing the skeleton of a clear structure, then work on filling in the skeleton with major and supporting points. Make sure it all logically follows. So logical development is extremely important. You'll save a lot of work by learning early in the process whether or not your plan is likely to work. After you have a plan in place, execute it. Okay, so this is usually the way it is done. Like I said before, these are no hard and fast rules. Of course, different things work for different people. So maybe a certain step will come before what I said, another one will come after. But this is basically the step that I'm trying to say that we should be following, but it could vary. Define your project and then stick to it. Okay, why do we need to stick to it? Can anyone tell me why is it so important that we should stick to our project? Why can we not keep changing it?
I think it's for the sake of consistency and also for generating the ideas. You know that the planning helps you to generate ideas and to proceed in a logical way, and it gives you direction where you are heading to.
Yes, thank you so much. I didn't know who I spoke to. I didn't get your name, but yes, thank you so much. That was a wonderful example and a wonderful explanation. For consistency, it would generate ideas, and you can't keep going off at a tangent. You can't keep changing the ideas of your project because you'll get nowhere. Okay, so you'll write a little bit and then you'll say, no, I think I should change it and do something else. So this will get you very confused. So yes, to keep consistency, to keep clarity, and to generate more ideas is definitely very important. So we need to define the project and stick to it. So part of planning and outlining your project is the task of defining it. What are you writing? What is the ultimate goal? For whom are you writing? Again, we come back to the audience. What are the stylistic requirements, the style that I just spoke about? Are you creating instructions? Is it an assembly manual or is it a form letter? Take the time to sit down and define your project. So be very clear about this in your mind before you go any further. Then organize your writing process to serve that definition. So always keep that definition in mind, that goal in mind. So a very good idea would be to write it down and then highlight it or maybe write it in bold so that you keep coming back to it and it stays very clear in your mind. Simplify your language. Now, again, like I said, this is not for all pieces of technical writing, but if you are going to do it, you may, of course, depending on your audience, you may need to simplify your writing, and there's no harm in doing that. Do not take twists and turns. So keep to the point, keep to the clarity, and make sure that you're getting to your goal, you're striking your target. Write in the most direct fashion you can get to your message across clearly, leaving as little ambiguity as possible. So don't leave any room for doubt. Don't write in such a way that people cannot understand what they're reading. So it has to be extremely clear. Remember, you're not writing a mystery novel, okay? So this is not creative writing. Don't keep going roundabout and beating around the bush. There should be no plot twist or surprise ending. So we have to leave that to the people who are the novelists. Don't go over your reader's head, okay? So make it very clear. Don't use unnecessarily complicated language. Now, understood, technical writing will have some kind of complicated knowledge, especially to people who are not familiar. It may look like complicated knowledge, but again, you have to understand that the person reading or looking at your paper is someone who definitely has knowledge in that field. So it will not appear very complicated to them, but don't go above and beyond that. So get to the point as quickly as you can. Establish a clear structure. So it's not about what you say, but how you present it. Your writing needs a very clear structure. So, first of all, that is why it's so good to give it a second eye. So, why can you tell me is it so good to give someone who is in that field to read your piece of writing, to give your paper or your writing to them? Let's say you've done a piece of mechanical writing or chemical engineering writing, you're giving it to someone who works in that field. Why is it so good for them to have a look at it?
Yeah, in order to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, this in someone's shoes, this means to have the second role. You have the role of a writer or the author, and also the role of the audience. So you have to play the two roles in order to have an angle of vision, the right angle of vision.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that very detailed answer. Yes. So, to give a different idea, a different vision, a different perspective, that's very, very important. A fresh piece of eyes looking at it is probably going to see if there are any shortcomings. Are there any things that are not too clear? Things that have looked very clear and very obvious to you may not look so clear to them. So, they'll point it out to you. So, maybe then you can clarify that point. So, it goes towards perfecting your piece of writing. It really helps. So, someone looking at it with a very positive but a critical eye can also give you many tips. So don't sorry, yes. So it's not about what you say, it's how you present it. Your writing needs a clear structure. Don't just dump in a bunch of data and expect your reader to make sense of it. Okay, so don't try to impress and say, okay, this piece of data looks really impressive, so I'm going to put it on over here. You need to understand what you're writing. You need to be clear about it. And does it fit in with my writing? Or is it something not so connected with what I'm writing? So then you need to leave it out. Think about your order of presentation. What needs to be explained first? How does the information need to be sequenced and how does it need to be paced? Okay, so am I doing it in the right order, in the right pacing? What needs more explanation and what can do with less? So is there a lot of explanation or is there less explanation, or should I simplify this a little bit more? Your writing should present a clear path of development, smoothly transitioning from one point to the next without any major jumps or hiccups, and it should clearly emphasize the most crucial ideas. So make sure you're dwelling on the most crucial ideas, then are not big jumps or big breaks in your writing, so that the transition is so abrupt that the person didn't understand, wait a minute, you were talking about something else in the previous paragraph, but now this talks about something completely different. So that should not be. There should be definitely a smooth flow. Yes. Plan a good layout. The key to the structure is layout. So as I said before, the layout is extremely important. Layout isn't about being pretty. It's about being clear and understandable, although you should also never underestimate the value of being pretty. Now, I said over here that it should be clear, it should be understandable, although it could be pretty. What do I mean by that? When I say layout should be pretty, do you need to decorate it with flowers and pictures? What do I mean by that?
So you mean that it is clear where to start and where to go and where to end. You are working as a guide to the reader. This is what I'm going to do first, second, and then how I'm going to finish my paper, for example.
Right, right, yes. And also, Al-Zahrani, Seham Al-Zahrani has said it has to be simple and clear. It has to, yes, Mary Kelly says, attract the reader's attention, definitely. So it should be a very structured and clear layout. So by pretty, this is exactly what I mean. Clear, understandable, and a smooth flow. So easy to understand. The best technical writers understand how to utilize layout techniques to make their message clear. Like a good magician, you want to lead the reader's eyes to your intended point of focus. Make good use of punctuation and of paragraphs. So we cannot undermine the use of good vocabulary, good punctuation, paragraphing. All of this makes for a clearly written paper. It stands out to the person who is actually reading it. So there is definitely a benefit in this. And like all of you said, it should be simple and clear. If you are writing, and here is an example to say how it could be done. If you're writing a user manual for a commercial lawnmower, don't just say that an overly tight blade belt can lead to malfunction and damage. Provide an example of what a properly tightened blade should look and feel like, and what signs of malfunction look like, so that you know how to deal with it. So you have to take this in mind. So again, that is so important. The style, the layout, again, gearing it to the audience. Better yet, combine your written example with a visual. So I'm coming now to, sorry, I think I read the wrong last point. Use layout techniques such as bulleted or numbered lists, bold keywords, and page breaks. Yes, so like I said before, highlight or use bold words, numbered lists so that they stand out for the person reading it. Use page breaks, draw attention to, and emphasize key points. People remember best what sticks out the most. Use this to your advantage to the most. Okay, and here I was with the examples. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead previously. Be sure to use examples that not only clarify and describe what you are discussing, but present the topic in terms of a realistic scenario. These are especially useful when the information you have presented implies potential problems that might arise. So always be aware that any information that you're writing about, any piece of machinery that you're writing about, could malfunction, there could be problems. So you have to anticipate that and maybe write about that too. Some do's and don'ts also could be included. If you're writing a user manual for a commercial lawnmower, this is what I have just read out. Don't just say that an overly tight blade can lead to malfunction and damage. Provide an example of what a properly tightened blade should look and feel like, and what signs of malfunction look like. Better yet, combine your written example with a visual. So the importance of visuals is I'm going to talk about it now in the next slides. It's really, really important how you use them. So graphs, charts, and illustrations, okay? So all kinds of technical writing can have these, okay, whether they are environment engineering or agricultural scientists or chemical, civil engineering, mechanical engineering. Graphs, charts, and illustrations could be there. And you can see some examples of visuals over here. You have the pie graph, you have the bar graph, you have charts with statistics and numbers, and you have pictures with the image or a model to show the different parts which have been clearly labeled. Yes, yes, as Reem Muhammad says, an illustration would do the trick. So incorporate useful visuals. So visuals and graphics can be wonderful tools when used right, and a major point of confusion when done improperly. So try not to use them in an improper way. Make sure that you really need these visuals and graphics that you're putting them, that they're not redundant, that they're not useless. Clearly marked visuals that show statistical trends or provide examples of how to perform a specific task when balanced with well-developed writing can make for extremely useful documents. So when you have a document which has a good piece of technical writing, which also is combined with very good visuals like graphs or illustrations, then it brings up the value of the document that much more. Some things are just too difficult to explain without a visual example. And we know this when we try to operate some kind of machinery, even things like software installation, or if we're just trying to put something basic together, having a visual or having a manual that explains things to us step by step, standard operating procedures, that can be extremely useful. Be careful, however, not to rely too heavily on visuals, okay? Otherwise, your document is going to look with less writing and more visuals, and we don't want that. Don't sacrifice clarity in exchange for more visuals. You're not writing a picture book. Moreover, if it is a messy visual, it will cause more trouble than good. So make sure whichever visuals you're putting, first of all, that they're absolutely necessary and needed, and that they're very, very clear. Establishing an appropriate voice. For any piece of writing, as with technical writing, you need to have an appropriate voice. A big part of technical writing is establishing an appropriate voice. You need to know how to address the audience or whoever you're gearing the paper for. Most often, you will be required to write from a neutral, third-person perspective, uh, although sometimes you may write from a slightly subjective first-person perspective, okay? So most of the time, keep it third person, but you could write sometimes in the first person if it is absolutely required. Regardless, technical writing and the voice presenting it is expected to be authoritative on the subject being presented. So when the person is reading your paper, they need to know that you are an authority who has done enough research and you've found out a lot, so you know a lot, you have mastered your topic before you actually wrote your paper. Be formal and as objective as possible, but avoid sounding mechanical. Also, different audiences and styles demand different voices. So you could be the same person, but you could do the technical piece of writing for different audiences. Then you have to vary the kind of writing that you are doing. You have to vary your style. Avoid time-sensitive claims. Can anyone tell me what this means? What do you think this means? Time-sensitive claims. I'll go back to the previous one because maybe the slide will give you a clue. Time-sensitive claim. Anyone know what I mean by that?
Maybe it means we're talking in the hot topic.
Yes, yes, yes.
Not out of date.
Right, very correct. Yes, that's absolutely correct. So you're talking about a topic that is like she said, hot topic, something that is very current and not out of date. At the same time, when you do your writing, you should make sure that your writing is also something that will not go out of date soon. So if it is something that is going to go out of date soon, then it will lose its validity when you write it. So avoid time-sensitive claims. Most technical writing needs to be updated from time to time. So maybe it was a paper you presented or a talk that you gave to an audience 2 years ago. So you need to go through it again to see if you can update it with modern information, if it was something that did need updating. Write your document to facilitate as little need for update as possible. So if you write your document for you in the future, where applicable, avoid making time-sensitive claims or delineating information that will become untrue or inaccurate as soon as a certain date comes to pass. Okay, so I'll explain more about this in the next slide. This, of course, is somewhat determined by style. So the kind of the type of writing that you are doing. If you're writing an annual, seasonal, or quarterly report, then almost all of the claims you make will be time sensitive. So if you're writing an annual report, which is a yearly report, of course, the next year it's going to be time sensitive because it's going to go out of date. If you're writing for the same thing, a seasonal report or a quarterly report. So that is expected. On the other hand, if you're writing a general reference article, you can and should avoid making these sort of claims. So if it's a reference article about something, again, like I said, a report, or you evaluated something or a piece of machinery, then you can avoid making any time-sensitive claims. For example, so here is an example of how this works. If I said that we're waiting to see what happens to the technical writing profession in 2018 due to the danger of people being replaced by robots, that statement will be outdated as soon as 2019 comes around. Or like if we speak now, speaking of 2021, if I'm writing about the claim now, when 2022 comes around, it's not going to work. So I have to think about that. This would create an unnecessary need for eventual updating. Keep your writing timeless and evergreen whenever possible. Again, it's not always possible, like I said, but try to keep it as much as you can to relate it to the time so that it saves you some extra work. Cite your sources, okay? Definitely citing sources is extremely important. So what are my sources? I need to be very clear about that. And this is a very sensitive field nowadays in any field of writing. This, of course, is somewhat, where are you? So you have to definitely know where are you getting your information from. Does it come from a series of scientific studies? So is it perhaps you rely on statistics? So where did you get your statistics from? Are you getting information from an article, or have you taken it from a book? Strong writing incorporates reputable outside sources and accurately cites them. So there's no harm in taking information from outside sources as long as you cite the information. You say that you have taken it from a particular place. Otherwise, we have a word that we often use. It's called plagiarism. Strong writing incorporates outside sources. Don't borrow information from somewhere else and forget to cite it. That's plagiarism and can be grounds for legal action. So very serious view is taken of this nowadays. Learn how to cite and do so where appropriate. So as much as possible, if you have taken a source from somewhere, then you must learn to cite the source. Revise, revise, and revise. Why is it so important to revise? Okay, I've done my piece of writing. I'm quite happy with it. Again, why should I revise? Can anyone tell me? What is the necessity for it?
I think especially this is necessary, especially before publishing, because once you publish your article or a scientific paper, you have no chance to revise it again. And also you have to have an eye on it in order not to regret some mistakes found by the other people.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. Thank you. Yes, definitely you need to revise to catch out your mistakes before it's out there for everyone to see. Once it's published, there can be no going back. You cannot make any changes. So yes, and I'm getting some very nice comments over here. Let me just read it. Yes, it should be, it should attract, there should be, illustrations should be up to date. Yes, definitely. Like we were talking about not having information that is time sensitive, even in illustrations should be in date. Reem Muhammad has said that. Mr. Awad says, in general, this type of writing should avoid personal opinions and bias. Definitely. There's no room for any personal opinions over here. We have to be extremely realistic. And Reem says, debug the writing. Yes. Mr. Awad says to be certainly sure that there are no errors. That's why revising is so important. Yes, we can catch our errors in time. And that's why an extra pair of eyes is also so important, so that they can tell us where we may have gone wrong. Reem, definitely eliminate ambiguity. Extremely important. Yes, to see that we're absolutely clear that we are not writing in such a way that there's no clarity, people cannot understand. And Mr. Abdullah says, you make sure that you have followed all your steps. Yes, definitely. This is a good time when you revise to see that, have I gone step by step? Have I taken each step, and does it flow into the next step? Or is it very abrupt? Someone reading it will not be able to understand it. So this is very important to be able to understand. So revising, this applies to all forms of writing, and technical writing is no exception. Nothing is perfect the first time around. You need to revise, and then you need to revise again. So 3, 4, 5, whatever works for you, as many revisions as possible before it goes out there, like you said. Some of you said, yes, because once it's published, there is no going back after that. This doesn't mean you can just run spell check and finish it, okay? So it's not as easy as that. In a technical piece of writing, as in any other kind of writing, of course, spell check is important. That is part of your revision. I wouldn't undermine the importance of that, but your content has to be reviewed, your style has to be reviewed, the academic side of the writing has got to be reviewed, and also the audience. Have I actually geared it to my audience? Is my content good enough? Um, you need to step away from the draft for a while. I think I was muted for a minute there. Okay, so sometimes you need to understand that you have to step away from your writing, look at it again critically with a fresh eye when you come back. So if you have been very involved with your scientific paper, with your piece of writing for many days, let's say you've worked on it for a month or maybe a month and a half, you need to give yourself a break, okay? Provided you have time for that, give yourself a break for 2 or 3 days, refresh yourself, revive yourself, and then come back to it. And then things stand out and are more clear to you. What can be made clearer? These are the things you can ask yourself. What can be expanded upon? So is there some idea that needs more expansion, more explanation? What can be cut? Okay, so not just expansion and adding on, but do I need to delete something? Do I need to cut down on something? Make sure your writing serves its purpose, okay? And that it shows consistency. And I think one of you mentioned this before when you spoke about consistency. You said it has to be consistent. When in doubt, get a second opinion, and then a third, and then a fourth. So there's no harm in getting different opinions from people, provided they are experts in the field that you're writing upon, okay? So if you give it to someone who totally doesn't have an idea, it's good if you're going to, you're getting an audience like that, someone who are not too familiar with that topic, then you could give it to someone who also is not too familiar. Then they would give you a very good idea of whether your message or your writing is going across to them, or it needs to be clarified a bit more. So there's no place for ego when you do writing and you're going to publish it. You have to get as many opinions as you can. On the other hand, if too many opinions you feel are confusing you, then stop for that time being and just go back to your own writing. And maybe later you could ask maybe a couple of more people to look at it. Also, don't underestimate the value of reading something out loud. Now, this may sound a bit silly and maybe a bit childish, but this can expose and fix unclear writing. Believe me, this is very, very important. When you speak out loud or you read out loud a piece of writing that you've done, a lot of things are formulated in your mind. It's somehow the verbal enunciation of what you've written crystallizes in your mind and brings up the ideas and makes them more clear. Has anyone tried this? Feel free to pick up your mic or write and tell me if you've tried it and any instance that has worked for you. Okay, nobody. Any other tip that you got when you were writing your paper besides the ones I've mentioned?
Yeah, this is in general what we call proof reading from another person. So it's very important step before finalizing your paper. So you need someone to proofread what you wrote from a different perspective.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So definitely proofreading is a very, very important step. And even if sometimes they can read it aloud to you, a certain part, and say, what exactly do you mean by this? Because I didn't get it. It wasn't very clear. Then it makes it more clearer to you what the problem is. Okay. Then you need to study the craft. Okay. So studying the craft, even though you're a seasoned veteran of technical writing, you may be or you may not be, reading about writing and studying the craft can keep you sharp. So you need to study your craft very well, read about it a lot, understand it, do a lot of research. Technical writing is an interdisciplinary genre that requires a writer to draw on aspects of writing, as well as other disciplines, including sciences, business, economics, and engineering. Can someone explain this point to me further? Why am I calling it an interdisciplinary genre?
I think because it's interconnect with other science, with other fields.
Mm-hmm.
So with the more practice, will make it perfect, I think.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, it is interdisciplinary because it's across the board. It connects with many other fields. Okay, so no field can be said to be isolated. Yes, it is isolated to a certain extent, but there are many areas and many spaces where it kind of flows into other fields and other genres. So you need to realize that you can draw on aspects of writing from other disciplines also to be able to explain. Like in my presentation today, I did mention that technical writing cannot neglect the academic side of it. Okay, so you have to give importance to paragraphing, to punctuation. So that is more the English side or the academic side. But yes, we have to give importance to it, even though we are writing a technical piece of writing. So writing is a lot now interdisciplinary. And over here, there will be a lot of overlapping with business, with economics, with engineering, and with other sciences. Did someone else want to add to that? I think someone had their mic on. Yes, Mr. Awad says share facts from other fields. Definitely, yes. Would anyone like to add something more to that? Okay, so I'll continue. If you're working to improve your knowledge and skills in any of these areas, there are plenty of high quality, flexible online degree programs available. So if you belong to a particular field of study and you would like to get to know a little bit more about other fields because you feel it's going to help your writing in the future, then there are many online courses and online programs available that you can enroll into, and this will enrich your field a little bit more. There's no harm in studying in other fields, always. It helps you, it broadens your views, it broadens your perspective, and it gives that much of interest and edge to your writing. So definitely it's a very good idea to try to go into other fields and try to learn more. If you're interested in studying writing in college, an English degree could be a great way to flex your technical writing muscles while gaining a well-rounded education with great future employment potential. So it doesn't mean that because you belong to the technical field that you have to keep to that. You can also get an English degree. And once you excel in that, then your technical writing will definitely be raised several levels up. So because I am an English teacher myself, I definitely would vouch for that. And I would try to say that it's very important to have a good command over the English language to be able to do a good piece of writing in any fields that you belong to. And a lot of the points that I put in the presentation today, my source is 15 Tips to Improve Your Technical Writing, written by Bobby Rich. And he has given a lot of these ideas. Of course, I've added on and I've expanded on some of those ideas to be able to present it to you. My next slide is some top resources to improve for a few minutes for you to go through it, to have a look, or if you would like to take a picture of it. And I would like to end by thanking all of you for coming today. I really appreciate that you attended this presentation. I hope you found it interesting and informative. And if you have any comments or questions, then you're welcome to write them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sajida. I appreciate your effort. It was amazing, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I wonder if we can have your contact mail or something.
Yes,
email or something.
Yes, I can type it in here. Okay, that's my contact information. Thank you, Basma. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mr. Basim. Thank you so much. I think there was a request for someone to go back to another slide. Mr. Awad says, go back to the slide where you show.
Very useful, very insightful, very interactive presentation, as we expected. Thank you very much. For the next week, dear brothers and sisters, we'll have two more very good presentations like this. One of them will be about professional writing, and the other will be about technological tools for writing. For now, I'll post the feedback link and the YouTube channel link and the other links for making appointments. Please make sure that you complete the feedback form before you leave. If you have more questions, you can go ahead. Thank you again, Dr. Sajida.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Faiza. Mr. Awad, if you didn't get the slides that you wanted, it will be available. On the YouTube channel.
Inshallah, the presentation will be available in about 24 hours at most, inshallah.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you.